Hey guys, I'm here again with another Down and Dirty with Devereaux, and today I'm going to be talking about domestic violence. So I'm sure most of you have heard about the Brittany Griner Gloria Johnson situation. If not, basically Brittany and Gloria got into an argument in their home. It turned physical, they got into a fight. Gloria's sister called the police and they both were arrested for assault. I asked the question, since in the last year domestic violence has been a major issue and men's sports have really started to crack down on it and make the punishment much more severe than they ever have been. Should women follow suit and do the same? Should the women's sports make the punishments really severe and really harsh when it's a woman on women situation or the woman is the aggressor? Now, 95% of the comments, emails I received, everything said that absolutely the punishment should be the same because domestic violence is domestic violence. Gender should not be an issue. None of that should be tolerated, so we should make the punishments the same as in men's sports. But there were two comments that really caught my eye and made me think about some things that were different than everybody else's. And the first is from the truth teller, and they said this: "Sounds like this was a fight. Whether they are a couple or not, I don't see it as the same thing because number one, it's two females, and number two, it wasn't one-sided." I don't agree with that first part because gender should not be a factor. But the second part I did agree with initially, because when I think of domestic violence, I think of an abuser and a victim. The gender may vary, the degree of abuse may vary, but there's always a short end of the stick. And the BG Glory situation, to me, it didn't feel like domestic violence. And a lot of the comments on social media and on the articles I read shared that view, in that they felt like it was a fight and that they were both of equal stature. They have similar strength and nobody was really had the upper hand in the situation, so it can't be compared to the Ray Rice situation. Now, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is it felt like they were fighting each other. Gloria's sister was quoted as saying that she called the police because the people in the house couldn't break up the fight. And if they can't break up the fight, to me that means that they're coming at each other equally. So they're both the aggressors. So that caused me to look up, what is the definition of domestic violence? And the Free Legal Dictionary said that domestic violence is any abusive, violent, coercive, forceful, or threatening act or word inflicted by one member of a family or household on another. That was the gist of all the definitions that I found. Now, some were more specific in saying that it could be a child or a spouse or an intimate relationship, but all of them said it was one person inflicting abuse on another, which is why the BG Glory thing seemed more like a fight to me. Now, I know that it's automatically a domestic dispute because they're a couple, obviously, but outside of that, it just felt more like a fight to me. Initially. Let's not get crazy, people. Let's not get too upset yet. That leads me to the second comment that I found really intriguing, which was by I Drape You Hate, and they said this: "Nah, I think the whole men shouldn't put their hands on women thing is the reason why men's sports crack down so hard on them." Obviously, there's a stigma with men hitting women. It doesn't matter what the woman does to the man, especially a man in sports. If he hits a woman, it's going to blow up in his face. So I thought, Devereaux, if it was a man and a woman, would you still think it's a fight? Okay, scenario. Ray Rice in the elevator. For the sake of argument, let's drop 60, 70 pounds off of him, and the chick isn't his fiance. His fiance is Ronda Rousey. They're in the elevator, get into an argument, gets heated. Ronda Rousey gets pissed, hits him with a 2-piece extra spicy bop bop right in his jaw. He gets mad, hits her in the gut. Elevator doors are open. The security sees it, arrests them both. Minor injuries. He has a bloody lip. She has a bruised stomach. Nothing major. What's going to happen? The man is going to be in trouble. He's going to be in some major trouble. He's probably going to get suspended for a ridiculous amount of games. And what's going to happen to Ronda? Probably not a lot because she's the woman in the situation. So that's what first caused me to change my views a little bit. And then secondly, I spoke with my friend and she brought up the point, okay, Dev, you don't know their situation. You don't know if this has been happening or it's the first time, but let's just say it's the first time. And they don't do anything about it. And, everybody's saying it's a fight. It's not really domestic violence. And it progresses and gets worse and worse and worse. So that's what really caused me to completely change my view, because You don't want something like that to progress and then become something that's way more severe in like in the case of Ray Rice. So I think that, you know, the league should treat it, and any women's league should treat it as the same as a men's league would, and make a very severe punishment, because you really don't want outsiders looking in. And especially if somebody's in an abusive relationship and they're seeing this unfold, and we're saying, oh, well, it's not really as drastic as some of the other situations we've seen. It needs to be handled different. It needs to be swept under the rug. And they're in an abusive relationship that's not on the higher end scale, but they're like, oh, okay, well, my situation isn't that bad. I can just deal with it. Obviously, you don't want people thinking that, you know, the lighter end of domestic violence is okay, whereas the more severe end is not okay. All of it needs to be grouped together. All of it needs to be handled the same. And while I don't think that, you know, BG and Glory's situation is on the Ray Rice scale, it still needs to be handled with the same severity to nip it in the bud and be understood that none of it is okay, and it needs to be handled swiftly. Now, I think it should be handled that way. I think it should be a severe punishment just to send a message that, you know, none of this violence is okay. You can't put your hands on another person. No matter who it is, what gender it is, what the situation is, keep your hands to yourself. Now, do I think they're actually going to do something about it? Absolutely not. Because, you know, last year, for one, the league really promoted this relationship and they made it one of the storylines of the WBA last year. So right now they're probably a little bit embarrassed and they're waiting for some time to pass and probably going to try to sweep it under the rug. And number two, Brittney Griner is a golden child of the WBA. She's a superstar and she brings a lot of attention to the league. So obviously they want her out on the court. So, I mean, I really don't think they're going to do a whole lot about it. If they do, it's going to be a slap on the wrist. It's not going to be anything major. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens and how it plays out. But I thank you guys for joining me for another Down and Dirty. I appreciate all the comments and the participation, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.